Hello, welcome to the Manasplained podcast. I'm Connor, and this is Millie, and today I'll be talking about the deck I built for Solkanar the Swamp King. So Solkanar is a 5-mana 5/5, which that's an insane rate for Legends. That like most of these are like 7-mana 6/4s and stuff, but 5 mana for a 5/5 is awesome already. Swamp Walk, so a form of evasion, and whenever any player casts a black spell, you gain a life. This card's awesome. Maybe I'm coping because every other card in this set is garbage, but Solkanar is awesome. And about the black spells gaining a life whenever any player casts one, that's really good. Life gain, and when you get into lower power in CDH, becomes so effective because people are not winning with combos as often. It's more damage effects, maybe some burn, stuff like that, maybe combat step. And so gaining a bunch of life is really going to be helpful. And if just one other player at the table has black spells in their deck, you're going to be gaining a bunch of life off this, and it's going to be really useful. And then of course you could use that life in order to crack back at the opponent, but I didn't decide to go it as a life gain synergy. I feel like that might have been done too much, or I don't know, I just wasn't really a fan of the whole life gain synergy stuff with this deck. So instead I'm going for like a Solkanar Voltron Swamp Walk kill your opponents kind of theme. I really hope you enjoy the deck. Now let's jump into the video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. That way more people get to see these videos and more people get to see Millie. Is now right, Millie? So for the deck breakdown, got 1 synergy card, 10 evasion to help with the whole swamp walk thing, 20 pump spells because Solkanar is a 5/5, and we need to get him up to 7 damage so that it's a 3-shot lethal with commander damage, which is super nice. And then 11 protection spells because since we're going for commander damage lethal, a lot of people are going to end up killing our commander because they don't want to die. And so we need a lot of protection to help stop that from happening. So in addition to all that, we have 10 draw, 11 ramp, 10 removal, 2 wipes, and 36 lands. This is important. We need the draw to be able to hit the ramp and protection, because if we can't use the protection spells on our commander for some reason, we need to be able to ramp to get our commander back out so that we can keep going. And then the removal is to stop bigger stuff on board that might be coming at us. The removal there is quite important because if people have stuff that might be stopping attacks, say it's a ghostly prison and we don't have the mana to be able to afford to pay that, having removal for stuff like that is very important. The 2 wipes can helpfully get rid of like huge boards full of tokens or something like that. That way we can still be okay and keep our commander out. The board wipes do dodge our commander, or at least they should, like 99% of the time. And so because of that, I'm comfortable running these board wipes in this Voltron deck. And then the 36 lands, I don't think we need more than that. I think 36 is fine with a 5-mana commander, as long as you keep a relatively good opening hand and able to draw into more lands later on. So all in all, that is 12 crossover cards, which is amazing for the uninitiated. Crossover cards are cards that fit into multiple categories at the same time, and the reason I like them so much is because whenever you draw them, it's like drawing more than one card because it fulfills multiple slots in your deck. So the more crossover cards you have, the more valuable each draw is going to be, and the more you're going to get out of each individual card in your deck being able to fulfill multiple roles. So I always try to strive for at least 10. That way 1/10 of your deck does double duty, which is awesome. So to start off, we have the 1 synergy card, and I'm not an MTG lore nerd, but I'm pretty sure that this is Solkanar's Horn, because whenever a player casts a black spell, you gain a life. That's just Solkanar's ability. So I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure this is just a cut-off Solkanar Horn. So no matter what, I had to add it to the deck because it is just a second copy of that ability, which I find awesome and hilarious. And now for the rest of the deck. So for the evasion category, since Solkanar has Swamp Walk, I really wanted to capitalize off that by giving our opponents swamps. And maybe not in the way you thought. This deck is still pretty budget, all things considered, so I'm not running very expensive cards like the card you might be thinking about right now. Stick around to the end and I'll talk about that card later. But yeah, here's what I did for the evasion category. So these are all enchantments that can give your opponent swamps. Evil Present, Contaminated Ground, Convincing Mirage, and Tainted Well, they're all auras. So you put it on an opponent's land, that land is now a swamp, and now you get free attacks on that player, which is awesome. Blanket of the Night's a little bit better because it makes all lands swamps, but specifically mana producing lands. So if you have any lands out that don't produce mana, like a Mazavith, that's not a swamp. But yeah, Blanket of the Night's kind of weird that way. But yeah, Contaminated Ground's great because whenever the enchanted land becomes tapped, its controller loses 2 life. It's a little bit of a, like, poking them with a stick every time they try to tap that land, just reminding them that they have a swamp now, you can attack them, which might be a bad thing, but I find that hilarious. And then Tainted Well draws you a card when it enters, so it replaces itself, which is really nice. All these cards making your commander unblockable is fantastic. And in addition to these are creatures that'll tap to make a land a swamp, so it's reusable. You don't have to target one opponent with it, because after that player dies or something, or you want to attack somebody else, you can then tap these creatures to make something else a swamp, which is great. The coolest one here is Zombie Trailblazer, because you can tap it, an untapped zombie you control, and target land becomes a swamp until the end of turn, or you can tap an untapped zombie you control and target creature gains swamp walk until the end of turn. It's a very cool card. Never seen this card before, but it's a pretty cool effect. I think it's pretty neat. At 3 mana for a 2/2 does kind of suck, but it also gets around needing haste, because instead of having a tap ability on it like Tideshaper Mystic, Zombie Trailblazer taps something. And so this has pseudo haste for its ability, which means the turn it comes out, you can attack with your commander with unblockable, which is awesome, which is why it's the best of the group here. But yeah, all these cards are great. So for the pump category, all these cards give at least +2 to Solkanar, so we can get to 7 for the commander damage lethal, or the 3-hit lethal. I think that's pretty important. 5 or 6 would be a 5-shot kill or a 4-shot kill. So getting up to that 3-shot kill range is pretty important. It would take 9 turns to kill everybody at the table, but because of the life gain from Solkanar, you do have more staying power than a lot of other Voltron commanders, hilariously enough. So these are my 2 favorite cards in this category, and for a couple reasons. One, their equipment, so that even if our commander dies, we can re-equip them later. They don't go to the graveyard like an Aura would. But also their black equipment, or black artifacts, so that they trigger Solkanar's ability. So you can gain a life off them casting them, which is fantastic. And Vorpal Sword here is phenomenal, because for 8 mana, it gets, whenever equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, that player loses the game. And Solkanar having unblockable if an opponent controls a swamp, which will be easy to do in this deck, that's just lethal. That's just commander, that's the game. You can just kill somebody for 8 mana with this card, which is crazy. I think this card's awesome. Also, just the +2/+0 and Death Touch is fine. Honestly, getting to 7, like I said, is important, but that 8 mana, target player loses the game, is amazing. Here are some more equipment in the deck. They all give at least +2/+2, but do have other effects. Bloodforged Battle Axe gives +2/+2, and whenever deals combat damage to a player, create a token copy of it. So if you make enough of these, you can get a 2-shot commander damage lethal. So you only need 3 of them equipped to the commander, which is not bad. And even if you only hit once, and then you make a second one, you'll probably have enough ways to get something else in addition to the copy of Bloodforged Battle Axe to get the commander to 11, which is an easy 2-shot kill, which is fantastic. Blown Splitter is just equip 1 and 1 mana for +2/+0, which is the cheapest rate there is in the deck. So that's just a great card. Darksteel Axe is indestructible, so it won't go away. It'll stick around, and people will not be playing their exile effects on this card, because that would honestly probably be a waste. So it's basically going to stick around for the entire game, which is awesome. Onaginata is +3/+0 and trample, which that's not really important. The important part is it's 1 mana, equip 2 +3/+0, which is amazing. And then one of the strongest cards in the deck, Champion's Helm, because it's hexproof and +2/+2. So it's protection and the pump effect, which is absolutely amazing. So next up are some auras, and these are my 3 favorite auras in the deck. Soul Kiss is probably my favorite, because for 3 mana, it enchants Solkanar, and then you can pay 1 black mana, and then you pay a life, and the enchanted creature gets +2/+0 until the end of turn, but you can't do this more than 3 times. So Soul Kiss, basically, for 3 mana and 3 life, give our commander +6/+6, which is a 2-shot lethal, which is amazing. The down from 3 to 2-shot lethal is phenomenal. It does cost 3 mana and 3 life to do it each turn, but that is more than worth it if we're going to be able to kill one of our opponents in 2 hits. Inner Demon's a board wipe, in addition giving +2/+2, so that's amazing, and it's all non-demon creatures get -2/-2, and Solkanar is already a demon, so the Inner Demon giving it to him doesn't really matter. But then Demonic Embrace, giving +3/+1, and we can recast it from the graveyard by paying 3 life and discarding a card. All these cards are awesome. Their additional utility is fantastic, and I love Soul Kiss. It's another one of the strongest cards in the deck, because for 3 mana and 3 life, our commander goes to an 11/11, which is huge. Here are some auras that protect our commander. So Molting Snakeskin can pay 3 mana to regenerate our commander, that's just good. It keeps our commander on the board so that if it would die, it just doesn't, which is fantastic. And then Fungal Fortitude, when the enchanted creature dies, it gets returned to battlefield tapped under its owner's control. So it's a little bit worse than Molting Snakeskin, because if our commander would die and has any auras on it, it comes back, all those auras fall off, which sucks. But we get to keep our commander, and we have enough equipment and other effects that it maybe losing an aura or two from it going to the graveyard is not a big deal, because again, one of our auras even comes back from the graveyard, so that's fine. So next up are some instants and sorceries that all pump. Boon Erebos, Unlikely Aid, Presumed Dead, they're all protection spells as well. Boon of Erebos is a regenerate effect. Unlikely Aid gets indestructible. And a Presumed Dead, when the creature dies, it gets returned to the battlefield and Suspect It, which means it can't block and it has Menace now. So that's a different form of evasion, but the whole point is that it can give +2/+2, or +2/+0, and protect our commander, which is very important. But then Gix's command. So the 2/1/1 counters in lifelink we're basically always going to choose, because that gets our commander up to the 7 power, and gaining 7 life off 1 attack there is going to be awesome. But then in addition to that, it can either destroy each creature with power 2 or less, return up to 2 creature cards from your graveyard to your hand, or each opponent sacrifices a creature with the highest power among creatures they control. And I didn't put this in the board wipe category, because basically every time we're going to be picking each opponent sacrifices a creature with the highest power among creatures they control. Because, oh my god, that is amazing. That's so strong. Holy crap. Being able to 3-for-1 our opponents like that, while also getting our commander bigger to swing in for a ton of damage. Gix's command does everything here, and I love this card. It's so good. And even if we need to, we could return up to 2 creature cards from our graveyard to our hand. Say we lose some of our creatures that can tap to give swamps to our opponents, then we can get them back to keep doing that for more unblockable. This card just does so many things. And then finally, these are a couple instants that give +2/+0, and when this creature dies, return to the battlefield tapped under its owner's control. They all just do that. Fake Your Own Death also gives you a treasure token, which is kind of nice. But yeah, all these cards are just meant for their pump when you need it, or their protection when you need it, and I think that's just super useful. So next up's the protection category. You already saw most of the cards. There are a bunch of instants that say when this creature dies, return to the battlefield tapped, or regenerate, something like that. But there is one protection card you haven't seen yet, and that's Swiftfoot Boots. There's no way I couldn't put this in the deck. Hexproof Haste, amazing. It's just 2 mana, equip 1. This card does everything. It's so insane. It's weird. Lightning Greaves and Swiftfoot Boots, I go back and forth on which is better, and they are pretty dependent on the deck. For example, Lightning Greaves I didn't put in this deck because the Shroud is just not very good. We need to be able to target our commander with protection or equip or enchantment, stuff like that. And so that Shroud, it just absolutely ruined the deck. But Swiftfoot Boots, the hexproof, is gravy. Oh my god, it's so good. It stops all targeted removal. It's just so good. And so because of that, I had to add in. It is the only source of haste in the deck, but when we have it, oh my god, it's going to feel incredible. So up next is the draw category, and I wanted to just lean on black in this deck because our commander says whenever we cast a black spell, we gain a life. The only non-black spells in the deck are the artifacts and then some of those creatures that can tap to make swamps. Everything else is a black card. So because of that, the draw category, I didn't put any blue or red card draw in there. All of it's just black card draw because I wanted that to be the deck. So to start off, we have Phyrexian Arena and Underworld Connections. Both of these cards are absolutely amazing. Underworld Connections goes on a land, and then it becomes a Phyrexian Arena where you just tap it to lose a life and draw a card every turn. It basically turns one of your lands into a Phyrexian Arena, so you basically, you lose 1 land a turn essentially, but that's amazing. It and Phyrexian Arena together are both 2 of the best draw spells in the deck. They'll just draw you so many cards. And the life loss from Phyrexian Arena doesn't matter because every time we cast a black spell, we gain a life. So the first time we cast Phyrexian Arena, if our commander's out, it's already going to pay for itself for the life the first time. And then if we draw any black spells with it, it'll be paying for the life again there. I don't like Phyrexian Arena in non-life gain decks because the whole losing life thing can actually matter. I've seen it mattered quite often. So this deck with the life gain to offset it, I'm super happy with these cards. Up next, we have Mask of Memory and Well of Lost Dreams. So basically how Well of Lost Dreams works in this deck is whenever we cast a black spell, we can pay 1 mana and then we get to draw a card. So all of our black spells will cost 1 additional mana and then cantrip in it as well, which is kind of crazy. Well of Lost Dreams here is kind of insane in that way. And then Mask of Memory, whenever the equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, you may draw 2 cards. If you do, discard a card. So the card filtering there was really nice, and helping us draw extra cards is super great. Both of these cards are the artifact draw cards in the deck, and they're both quite amazing. And then finally, at 2, 3, and 4 mana, these are all just draw effects. Night's Whisper and Sign in Blood is lose 2 life, draw 2 cards. Read the Bones is scry 2, draw 2 cards, then lose 2 life. Painful Truths is you draw X cards and lose X life, where X is the number of colors of mana spent to cast this spell. So if we can spend a blue, a red, and a black on this, we'll lose 3 life and draw 3 cards. And then the same thing with Ambitious Cost and Ancient Craving. They're both 4 mana, lose 3 life, draw 3 cards. And because they're all black, we get to gain a life whenever we cast them, so all of their life loss gets cut down, which is really nice. And they're all just great ways to refill our hand and keep going. So now we have the ramp, and because we're in Grixis, we don't have access to the same kind of ramp we would in a green deck, which kind of sucks, but there are a couple cards in here that are special to black and help you ramp out a lot faster. So Crick, Son of Yawgmoth turns all of our black mana pips into Phyrexia mana pips, so whenever we cast our black spells, we can pay 2 life instead of the black mana to cast them, which is kind of nuts. It makes it so that our spells that can protect our commander that cost 1 and a black or 1 black mana are now just life, and so it's way easier to cast them. Crick honestly goes so hard in this deck. Defiler of Faith makes all of our permanent black spells. You can replace 1 of the black pips with a Phyrexian black mana, which is crazy. But whenever we cast a black permanent spell, target creature you control gets +1/+1 and gains menace until the end of turn. So if we cast 2 black permanent spells in a turn, our commander will get +2/+2, which again gets to 7 for that special threshold on commander damage, which is great. And then Dark Ritual, being 1 mana to make 3 black mana, is kind of ridiculous. Dark Ritual is an insanely powerful card, and it really helps us get our commander out so much faster. Up next, we have all of the artifacts that make colored mana. As you can tell, none of them produce non-black mana. So the other, is it Signet isn't in here, or Talisman of, I can't remember what the talisman is called, but the Talisman and Signet that produce blue and red mana isn't here because it's honestly not that useful. We always want our stuff to be able to produce black mana if we can, because that's the most prevalent color in the deck. And then these are the last ramp artifacts. So Wayfarer's Bauble goes and gets us any basic land out of our deck and onto the battlefield, which is absolutely incredible. It and going and grabbing a swamp, or if we need the blue or red mana, grabbing a mountain or an island is super nice. Soul Ring, card's one of the strongest cards in the history of Magic. I don't really need to talk about it, but it is slightly less good in this deck because of all the black mana pips floating around, but it helps get our commander out so much faster, so that's why it's in here. And then Prismatic Lens, it does tap for a colorless, but we can filter a mana through it to make a black mana if we really need to. But again, it'll just help cast some of the other stuff in the deck. And I needed another mana rock, and because this can produce colored mana and it doesn't enter tapped, that's why I wanted it. So because we're in Grixis, we have access to absolutely phenomenal removal, especially black giving us access to so much creature removal. I really went that way specifically because I wanted, like I've said before, almost all the cards in the deck are black, so they can help proc Solkanar's life gain, just to help give you the deck some staying power. I went for mostly black removal in this case because it's really strong for getting rid of creatures, and honestly, big creatures coming at us is what we got to be worrisome of, and other people's commanders. So up first, Doomblade, Walk the Plank, Go for the Throat are the conditional removal spells. Doomblade's non-black creatures, Go for the Throat's non-artifact creatures, and Walk the Plank is non-merfolk creatures. Honestly, Walk the Plank is basically unconditional because more often than not, people don't tend to play merfolk. There is the new merfolk commander that came out with Lost Caverns of Ixalan. That's absolutely ridiculous. But besides that, Walk the Plank will hit anything, so that's really good. And then Infernal Grasp and Feed the Swarm are unconditional. Infernal Grasp, you have to pay 2 life, which is absolutely fine. It's only paying 1 life because of our commander. And then Feed the Swarm, again, you have to pay life equal to the permanent's mana value, but it can hit creatures or enchantments, which giving Block the ability to remove enchantments was kind of stupid, but Feed the Swarm is an absolutely phenomenal card. Next up are the Rakdos removal spells. So Terminates, destroy target creature, it can't be regenerated, which the regenerate thing won't come up often, but just the unconditional destroy target creature is very useful. Molten Collapse is amazing because it's destroy target creature or planeswalker. And then if you've Descended, which is a permanent card is put into your graveyard from anywhere this turn, you get to do both, which would destroy target non-creature non-land permanent with mana value 1 or less. So this can get a creature and a Soul Ring, which is kind of crazy. That level of 2 for 1 is awesome. And then Bedevil is destroy target artifact creature or planeswalker. If someone has a really important artifact out, or they have a really powerful planeswalker out, Bedevil can help get rid of that. Also, the art's by Seb McKinnon, who is my favorite MTG artist. His stuff is just so cool. And then finally, we have these 2 removal spells. Nightmare's Thirst is you gain a life, and then target creature gets -X until the end of turn, where X is the amount of life you've gained this turn. So this gets around indestructible, which is very important. If you've cast a couple of black spells and maybe gain 3 or 4 life, and then cast this, that's the 5th life, and then -5 to something will deal with a lot of things. And if people have some pesky indestructible stuff out there, this might be able to deal with it. And then Gix's Command, the lifelink and moment counters, like I said earlier, is absolutely busted because the lifelink really helps with the staying power, and the fact that it can do the sacrifice a creature with highest power among creatures they control. Oh my god, Gix's Command, the 2 for 1 there is it's crazy. It's more like a 4 for 1 because we're making our commander bigger and getting rid of all our opponents' big creatures. It's absolutely wild. So you've already seen one of the board wipes being Inner Demon. It giving -2/-2 to everyone's creatures is pretty good. It can deal with a lot of tokens. And like I said before, I didn't put Gix's Command in the token in the board wipes thing because you're never going to be using it for that. The sacrifice big stuff is more often than not going to be what you're doing for that card. And I just don't see that coming in nearly as often, especially when we have another card that can deal with tokens. You're going to want to be able to use that to get rid of the big stuff more often than not. But the other board wipe you haven't seen yet is Essence Pulse. So 3 and a black, you gain 2 life. Each creature gets -X until the end of turn, where X is the amount of life you've gained this turn. You have to be careful with this one because you could kill your commander if it gets too big. But at X being 4 or 5, maybe your commander gets +2/+2, so you can even do X equals 6. You can really hose a lot of players with this. Get big stuff like 4/4s and 5/5s out of there. Yeah, Essence Pulse is an absolutely awesome card. It starts out at X equaling 3 because of our commander, and we only need to cast one other thing to get it to 4. Yeah, Essence Pulse, absolutely amazing. And then again, Inner Demon being a board wipe and a pump spell is awesome. So for the land category, again, 36, nothing too crazy, but just like the signets and the talismans, I didn't put any lands in that don't produce black mana or color, unless they produce colorless mana or they do like some kind of effect. I wasn't putting any lands in that only produce blue or red mana, just because I'd rather have a utility land or a land that produces black mana. So here are some of the lands I went with. Darkwater Catacombs and Drowned Catacomb. Just those are the kind of Dimir lands I went with. Rakdos, Carnarium, and Luxury Suite. Again, I went for the same kind of lands in Dimir as well, just kind of showing the full gauntlet of lands I went for. And then Obscura Storefront is a great fetch land. It'll go grab any of the types we need for this deck and also gain us a life, which is fantastic. And then Myriad Landscape, we can go find 2 of the same basic land type. So Myriad Landscape can grab us 2 swamps more often than not, which is super useful. And like I said before, and I'll say in all of my videos, please, Wizards, put the Battle Bond lands in all of the pre-constructed commander decks and all of the commander products like Commander Masters, Battle for Baldur's Gate. You did put them in Commander Legends, but all of these cards should be in every single commander product because they're designed for multiplayer format. Thank you. So this deck was very hard to put together. I was surprised with how good the commander is relative to the rest of his peers. And I could have went more the life gain route, but I wanted to go more the kill people with Soul Canar route, use the life gain as staying power kind of thing. Maybe a life gain deck with cards that have life gain payoffs would have been better, but outside of white, it's kind of hard to find a lot of really good life gain cards that way. Black does have some, but it's really not super amazing. They more are help when you're gaining a lot of life to help use like a laser beam with stuff like Veto. But yeah, I went this way, and maybe I should have went the life gain. I don't know, but these are a bunch of the maybe cards that I'll talk about. So it's probably already in the comments before you get to this point in the video, but someone's going to say, where's Urborg? And I understand it gives everybody swamps, but the card is so expensive. If I was going to be making this deck with no budget and not care about the budget at all, I would put in all 4 of these cards and maybe some other tutors in order to get Urborg out consistently, because it would have been the best card in the deck if I was going no budget. So because of that, yes, Urborg probably should be in here, but it's too expensive. And then you want to also run like Cabal Coffers and Cabal Stronghold if you're going to be running Urborg, help you make a ton of mana. It's just I didn't see that being super necessary here with the other 10 evasion cards being able to give opponents temporary swamps or permanent swamps in that way. But yeah, I can totally understand why every deck should be running an Urborg. It's just a little too expensive for me. Up next, I expected people to say, where are the Sword ofs? And here they are in the maybe category. Because our commander is unblockable, you would probably want to run all of the ones that don't give protection from black, because those are the only cards in this deck that will be targeting our commander. So you could run all of those if you wanted to. Some of them are a lot better than others. Sort of Truth and Justice, pretty good. Hearth and Home, getting and fetching a land every time is amazing. Forge and Frontier, the card advantage is great. Which one draws cards? I think that's Fire and Ice. Draws cards and then deals 2 damage to any target. That's also really good. So there are some very good swords here, but they all are kind of expensive. And they do give the +2/+2. Like, really, if you're going the Voltron strategy, again, no budget, I would run probably even all of these, even the ones that give pro black, because, man, the protection from all the colors and dealing the 2 damage, these cards are absolutely amazing. So I can totally see you running all of these. So these are some of the cards that are actually in the maybe category on the deck list. Unholy Strength, only giving a pump effect for the 1 mana is great, but I wanted my cards to be a little more versatile than that. Virulent Swipe, doing it twice isn't the commander lethal. If it did it 3 times, I would say yes, but the fact that they can kill our commander and then during our upkeep this can go off and then it just does nothing kind of sucks. Sugar Rush, target creature gets +3/+0 until the end of turn and then draw a card. Again, that's great because it can replace itself, but it is just a one-time and then replace itself because it's an instant, so I wasn't too happy with that. And then Rouse being free. If you control a swamp, you can pay 2 life. That's probably the best one here because it's a free instant to give +2/+0. But at the same time, I didn't want instants and sorceries that were pump effects unless they were also protection, because the one-time damage boost is not as good as something that I can do it multiple times, hopefully going in for commander lethal. And then here's the other strategy I could have done with the deck, the Veto Marauding Blight Priest way, where whenever you gain life you cause drain effects. These are very good cards and that strategy is great, but I was just looking for more of a kind of kill people with Solkanar strategy, because when you look at the big evil swamp monster, you want to swing in with him. Instead of just sit there and durdle gaining life. But this still is a quite good strategy, and if you want to run more like black cantrips so that you can cast a bunch of them, gain a bunch of life, cause a bunch of life loss, like Marauding Blight Priest and cards like that, I can totally see that. And that was the other idea for the deck. And with cards like Siphon Life, where you can recast them multiple times, so you don't have to worry about spending all of your spells, you have stuff in the graveyard you can recast. Yeah, I shied away from this because without white, it is a lot harder to make a deck like this really pop. And to round off the maybe board, here are a bunch of artifacts. So Staff of the Death Magus gains you a life whenever you cast a black spell or a swamp enters the battlefield under your control, which is amazing. Like I said before, if I was going for more of that life gain strategy, this card would be amazing. Just like Paradise Plume, when enters battlefield, choose a color. Whenever a player casts a spell of the chosen color, you gain a life, and then it taps for the chosen color. So it's a Demon's Horn or Solkanar that can also tap for mana, which is amazing. But like I said before, it is also 4 mana and only taps for 1 color. And if you were going for more the cantrippy style deck, this card would be awesome, but it's just a little too slow for what I'm trying to do with the Voltron strategy. Bolus of Citadel would have been the ultimate payoff card, because if we had a bunch of black cantrips in the deck, paying 1 mana or 2 life or 1 life to cast them off the top of our library, and then getting some of that life back with our commander, we could really go off, which would be incredible. But again, like I said, we're not really what we're doing here, and it is a really powerful card, and especially the sacrifice 10 non-land permanent, each opponent loses 10 life. That's a crazy effect. That's 30 damage right there, which is a lot. So yeah, Bolus of Citadel, kind of nuts. But again, I also am not a huge fan of this card. Every time I've played it or seen it play, it's kind of just wins the game on the spot almost for 6 mana, which just feels kind of gross. And then finally, Painter Servant. If you were playing a deck that had less black spells and more like diverse across all of the colors, more blue and red spells going on, Painter Servant would be great because it makes all of the spells black for your opponents as well, which is crazy. So every time your opponent casts any spell, you gain a life, which the card's $40, which is why I'm not running it. But again, for the life gain strategy, Painter Servant would be one of the strongest cards in the deck. So what'd you think? I'm pretty happy with it. I was very torn. I was 50-50 on the commander damage version of the deck or the life gain version of the deck. And I just really couldn't find a way to make the life gain version of the deck work in a way that I was happy with, that wasn't super expensive, with cards like Painter Servant and stuff like that. And so I'm pretty happy with where it is now. It definitely could be better. It could be have the Sword ofs. It could be the Marauding Blight Priest, which would be a very fun black spell slingy cantrip style deck. But I think swinging with this big meanie face, I'll show right now, like this guy, swinging with this mean guy in that club and hitting for commander lethal is going to feel great. Yeah, I'm just happy with how I decided to go with the deck, and let me know down in the comments below. Have you ever played Solkanar? How would you take the deck list? I know this one was pretty anticipated. I hope you're happy with it. But yeah, let me know. So don't forget to follow me on all my socials. Twitter is when I post when these videos go live, so you don't miss them. TikTok and Reddit, I'll eventually start making content over there. And then Architect and Moxfield are where all my deck lists live. So thank you so much for watching, and as always, get building, splainers. That is so